The NFL offseason is officially underway, and through the upcoming months, we could expect a ton of changes to come to many NFL teams. Most of these teams are a move away from making it to the Super Bowl, whereas some of these teams have made a questionable decision in the past and we're trying to get out of it. In this video, we're going to be discussing 7 NFL players that are about to be traded for a myriad of different reasons. Now guys, before we get to the content, if you are new to the channel and you watch a lot of my content, be sure to take a moment to subscribe, because as soon as we hit 10,000 subscribers, we're going to be uploading content on this channel about 4 times a week. So make sure you subscribe and turn notifications on, and on top of that, check out our brand new Instagram page called Flight Microphone on Instagram for additional content about football. Now, starting at number 7 is the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Stefon Diggs. And a couple of years ago, Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen were considered to be 2 of the most dominant wide receivers in the entire NFL. And the fact that they played on the same team was considered to be unfair. At the time, their quarterback was a journeyman quarterback of the name of Case Keenum, and many people believe that if the Vikings were provided with a solid quarterback or even an average quarterback, that both Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen would take the next step. And as a matter of fact, in 2018, they did, because Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen both gave the Minnesota Vikings a 1,000-yard receiving season. And this is the first time it's happened to the Minnesota Vikings since Randy Moss and Chris Carter did it back in 2000. The beginning of last season opened up with some chemistry issues between the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, mainly because Kirk Cousins was throwing fairly passive throws towards Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs. As a matter of fact, it got to a point where Stefon Diggs appeared to demand a trade in the middle of the season. Although he didn't come out and say this forthright, he did imply that he would like a change of scenery. But as the season went on, Kirk Cousins got it together, and Stefon Diggs once again had a phenomenal season, finishing the season with over 1,100 yards receiving, but he did regress with 6 touchdowns as opposed to 9 the year prior. Now, Stefon Diggs has hinted that he knows that he's about to get traded. He recently removed all Minnesota Vikings related content off of his Instagram account. The teams that I believe he's most likely to go to are the Indianapolis Colts, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Redskins, or the New England Patriots if they somehow pull off a trade for him. Which brings us to number 6, and that's Darius Slay. Now, if you don't know who Darius Slay is, he is the best corner on the Detroit Lions and currently the best corner you could potentially acquire on the market in terms of his age. And the reason for that has to do with the fact that he can remain so productive for so much longer. He's 28 years old, and there is absolutely no chance that Darius Slay will re-sign with the Detroit Lions next offseason, so the Detroit Lions might as well try to get something in return for him. Now, if the Lions were to trade Darius Slay, it would not only bring back a couple of draft picks, but it would also free up nearly $10.5 million in cap space, and the Lions should have no problem finding a trade partner, mainly because Darius Slay is one of the best coverage corners in the league, and top corners typically cost significantly more than $10.5 million, which would be his cap hit number for his new team. Darius Slay can play both inside or out and match up with receivers of all sizes. If Detroit puts him on the block, it'll get calls from all over the league, and most recently we've heard that the Los Angeles Rams are somehow trying to make a move for him, which is kind of surprising considering the fact that they are so strapped for cap and are expected to pay Jalen Ramsey and currently have locked up Aaron Donald. Number 5 is the tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that's OJ Howard. And the reason he is on the trading block is it wouldn't make much sense for the Buccaneers to hold on to a player like OJ Howard if Bruce Arians isn't going to use him. Last year it was projected for OJ Howard to have a phenomenal year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now that Bruce Arians is in town, and it was actually pegged to be a top fantasy option. But unfortunately, that wasn't really the case because OJ Howard struggled in Bruce Arians' new system and was only targeted 54 times throughout the entire year last season. Well, bear in mind, OJ Howard is a 2017 first-round pick, and there'd be plenty of teams that are willing to take a chance on him. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could fetch a day 2 pick if the Bucs are willing to trade him. If the 2019 season is any indication, he's more valuable to the team as a trade chip than as a tight end, as Bruce Arians doesn't seem overly interested in featuring him in the offense. He may have already been traded if it was not for his contract, which would stick the Bucs with a $3.5 million cap charge while providing no savings. That could very well drive up Tampa Bay's asking price to the point where no team would be willing to deal for OJ Howard, so keep an eye out on him. Number 4 is Le'Veon Bell, and Le'Veon Bell has had a very interesting last 2 years. After previously being one of the 3 Pittsburgh Steelers triplets with Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell decided to sit out 2 years ago in a protest for a brand new contract, which makes sense because running backs typically don't get that kind of security and could be injured at any moment because of the amount of hits they take per game. So Le'Veon Bell set out the entire season in protest for a brand new contract, which the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't give into, mainly because James Conner was completely dominating with Le'Veon Bell out. So the past offseason, he went and signed with the New York Jets, but almost immediately after signing the New York Jets, controversy followed. The general manager that signed Le'Veon Bell ended up getting fired, and Adam Gase was rumored to not be Le'Veon Bell's biggest fan because he didn't believe in investing so heavily in the running back position. Ultimately, the signing ended up flopping and blowing up in the New York Jets' face. In 2017, Le'Veon Bell had a phenomenal year, rushing for 1,291 yards, 9 touchdowns, and averaging 4 rushing yards per carry. The year before that, in 2016, he rushed for 1,268 yards at a significantly more efficient 4.9 yards per carry at a 105.7 yards per game average. But last year with the New York Jets, in his first season back, Le'Veon only rushed for 789 yards for an abysmal 3.2 yards per carry. Now, you can attribute this to many options. Maybe the fact that you don't have a crazy wide receiver threat like Antonio Brown that defenses have to key in on that could distract them from trying to stuff the run. The fact that that's missing could have slowed down Le'Veon Bell, or the fact that the New York Jets don't nearly have as great of an offensive line as the Pittsburgh Steelers had. Further evidence for the fact that investing in the running back position might not be the move when you're trying to build a brand new roster, as running backs are trying to get more respect in the NFL. And this is just getting more and more ugly, as according to NYDailyNews.com, apparently Adam Gase has implored media influencers to bash Le'Veon Bell and to publish the fact that Le'Veon Bell wasn't necessary for the New York Jets offense in a way to sway opinion that the Jets don't need Le'Veon Bell. And then when that didn't work, Adam Gase tried to tell people that the reason he didn't want Le'Veon Bell was the amount he was being paid, which makes sense as well. At the end of the day, I don't know who's going to trade for Le'Veon Bell. I think there's a chance he gets cut if he doesn't get traded, though, because of his abysmal season with the New York Jets. Number 3 is Cam Newton, and I cannot believe Cam Newton is on this list, but there's a myriad of reasons why Cam Newton might be on the outs. The first reason is there's a brand new regime coming into the Carolina Panthers with Matt Rule taking over for their old head coach Ron Rivera, but couple that with the fact that Cam Newton has had injury issues recently and the fact that his contract's expiring and he's 30 years old, and you have plenty of reasons why the Panthers would try to at least get something in return for Cam Newton when he has all the leverage and he could potentially leave the year after. We're about to find out how owner David Tepper feels about the Panthers roster. If he's looking to blow things up, trading the best quarterback in the history of the franchise makes some sense. If not, and Tepper feels like this team can compete for a playoff spot in 2020, I don't see how the Panthers will find a better option at a reasonable price of $21.1 million. That's Cam Newton's cap hit for the 2020 season, and Carolina can save $19.1 million of that if they deal him. It's in the team's best interest to at least gauge the league's interest in Newton, who is coming off of a second consecutive season that was cut short due to injury. But David Tepper has been making some pretty sketchy comments about Cam Newton recently. Stuff like, listen, I'm not a doctor. I said it a million times. Is he healthy? He's not a doctor, so there's a lot of things that can happen, but first, is he healthy? Tell me that and we can talk. The Panthers owner basically said the team will first figure out if Cam Newton is healthy before deciding on his future. So if Carolina does openly shop Newton, teams may be wary of trading for possibly damaged goods. That would drive down his trade value. Then again, an NFL team traded a first-round pick for Sam Bradford as recently as 2016, so anything is possible. Number 2 is Todd Gurley, and the reason for this is the Rams are so desperate for cap space that trading Todd Gurley just seems like the move to make from a financial standpoint. Such a move would cost the team $12.6 million in dead money, while also only saving $4.65 million in 2020 cap space, but here we are. Los Angeles needs money to re-sign Jalen Ramsey and Corey Littleton, and apparently they're looking at Darius Slay, while also figuring out a way to rebuild the offensive line without a first-round pick. Restructuring Jared Goff's deal would free up a good chunk of cap space, but trading Todd Gurley should still be an option the front office explores. It it may be very difficult to find a willing trade partner for Todd Gurley, who may have an arthritic knee coming off of a down season, but the team that trades for him would be getting him at a fairly decent price after 2 seasons. After 2 seasons, Gurley's contract would essentially become a pay-as-you-go deal with a cap charge of about $9 million per season. That's still an overpay for a running back, but not an egregious one if Gurley can get back to his 2018 form, which is a very big if you ask me. Which brings us to number 1, Patrick Peterson. I'd actually be absolutely stunned if the Arizona Cardinals don't shop Patrick Peterson. The veteran corner has demanded to be moved in the past before walking the demands back, but now it's actually in the team's best interest to move on. Patrick Peterson's 32 years old. He missed the first half of the 2019 season after flunking a PED test and then played poorly after returning. He's also entering the final year of his contract, and it's unlikely that a rebuilding team will want to commit long-term money to a player who is clearly past his prime. Arizona may have to pay some of Peterson's 2020 salary if it's going to be able to make a deal, and I'm not sure how many teams are willing to give up a draft pick and pay Peterson over $12 million for what will likely be a 1-year rental.